Welcome to be a part of Creative Wanderers. And now, let's learn one of the important concepts of Python, and that is variables. Variables in Python is one of the core concepts and also our first important term. If you're a beginner, you might not know this, but then if you know some programming languages before, then this might feel so simple because variables are there in all programming languages. But then what exactly is this? Right? Imagine it as a container or a box which stores our information. And if we want, we can use them throughout our program. But before writing a variable, we have to follow certain rules, and that is first rule is start with a letter or the underscore character. Then cannot start with a number. Can only contain alphanumeric characters and underscores. Well, what does alphanumeric mean? Well, alphabets and numbers are case sensitive. Variables are case sensitive. So these are the rules that you should follow while writing a variable. Now let's explore them. Let's say you are playing an endless runner and your current score is, well, 3000. Hey, good going, keep it up. And we are storing this information, this value, in a variable known as score. So score equals 3000. And when we just put this equal sign and assign this value to the score, this means here our variable is score and we are assigning this value to this. It is also known as binding. In Python, you can name a variable as anything you want. It's all your choice. And in our case, we named it as score. But the point here is, we should be able to retrieve it or we can use it anywhere in a program at any time we need. So let's say we can print this at some point of time using this variable. And if I just run this, I get this 3000. So this is only the idea behind a variable. You can use it anywhere in your program at any time. But what is actually happening here? Remember that in memory, everything is stored in binary numbers, right? So here when I bind this value to this variable score, what is happening? In memory, 3000 is stored in a binary number, but we don't have to care for that because it's all up to the machine. So we don't care for that. But then, when I later use my variable, what is happening? So here, our interpreter knows that as soon as we give this information, it takes this value or it takes this variable score and it knows that, hey, you have assigned me a value in memory. And then it looks for that value which is pointed in the memory. So in memory, score is pointed to 3000, right? So whenever we use this later in our program, we just need to print this variable name and not this value every time, right? So our interpreter just goes for that, look at it, and then prints the value for us. So this is what happening inside memory. but we don't care for that. And what we care for is only writing this variable in the best possible way it should be. It's all a choice. But then, as I mentioned before, there are certain rules or best practices that you should follow before writing a variable. And they are: a variable should always start with a letter or an underscore. So in our case, this is a proper one, right? So this is starting with a letter. And according to the rule, it can also be an underscore, right? So this is also correct. But then here also should be the correct one. So this is correct. And our next rule is cannot start with a number. So here we can do something as 9 score, right? If I do that and print this, did you see that? Invalid syntax. This means our rule somewhere went wrong, or our, the proper way of writing a variable is wrong here. And what was the mistake? Well, we started with a number. It can only be a letter or an underscore to start with, right? And our next rule was our variables can only contain alphanumeric characters or an underscore. No other special characters, right? So in our case, this is a correct one. Why? Because our variable is only of letters. But then you can have numbers or underscores, and if you are choosing for a number, it should not be at the beginning as we saw before, right? And also you can have an underscore. Let's say you have a variable known as your score. And this is also a thing which is known as snake case. Whenever you have two names as a variable, then you can have an underscore in between them. And this is the right way of doing that. And then there is one thing that you should always consider, and that is we can never have another special character other than underscore in our variable. This means you cannot have a semicolon in between this. This will be an error because this is a special character, right? Always remember that we can have only underscore as a special character, not any other thing. Now, coming to our fourth rule, variables are case sensitive. What does that mean? Well, there is a clear differentiation between uppercase and lowercase. So, if you have like this S is capital, and well, we print this here as small letter. If I run this, name score is not defined. Why is that? Because here it's uppercase. This S is in lowercase, right? So we can't do that. Variables are case sensitive. And here name is not defined. Of course, if this is in caps, then how is it defined, right? And there is also one more rule that I didn't mention before, and that is we cannot override keywords as variables. And what are these keywords? Well, let's say if you just write print as a variable and then you just print. If you run this, you see that int object is not carryable. And what does this mean? Well, print is a function or a keyword in your Python, and you now just overrode this as int because we know that 3000 is an integer, right? So this is an error because we cannot use keywords as a variable. And if you just type in Google what are the keywords in Python, there a list arises and we will learn all of them throughout our series. And there is also one more thing that I need to mention, and that is you can reassign a variable. So our variable was score equal 3000, and you can say b equal score and then print this b. If I run this, well, you got your score as 3000. This was a score, right? So this is right. And we can actually assign variables in another way. And that is, say you have a, comma b, comma c is equal 1, comma 2, comma 3. And if you just print this, say we are a and then b and c. So here if I run this 1, 2, 3, we get the right answer, right? A is 1, B is 2 and C is 3. So this is another way of assigning variables, and you will see these many code bases, so that I just mentioned it. And this is all about variables. I know this was a bit long video, but then be patient guys and do code along with me. So see you in the next video. Stay tuned.